My name is Amelia. I'm turning 30 soon, but I'm not married. Actually, the truth is, marriage is the least of my concerns. Right now, I'm working part-time. A few months ago, the company I was working for went through financial difficulties, resulting in significant cost-cutting measures. Many people were laid off, and I was one of them. Since being laid off, I've been striving every day to find a new job, but it's been challenging to get hired. I'm still living with my parents, and I couldn't help but feel self-loathing. It's no wonder though. Not only do my parents live with me, but my younger brother Owen, the overachiever, also resides with us. Owen is 2 years younger than me, and it's what people commonly refer to as a successful person. I've known that he's always worked hard, and he even attended a prestigious national university and secured a well-known job there. His salary seems decent now, and even though he lives at home, he contributes enough to cover the living expenses that would be required if he were living alone. Unlike his failure of a sister, me, he's truly accomplished. However, even in my current situation, neither my family nor my brother blame me. Instead, they say let's support each other as a family. Sometimes I feel a bit overwhelmed by their kindness, but I can't afford to move out with just my multiple part-time jobs. While immersed in self-loathing, I found myself relying on my family at home. One day, as usual, we gathered around the dinner table, waiting for my brother to come home. While engaged in casual conversation, we enjoyed the delicious meal prepared by our mother. Then my brother set down his chopsticks and straightened his posture. "Hey, I have something to tell you all." His demeanor was more serious than usual, and naturally, my parents and I put down our chopsticks and turned our attention to him. "I've decided to get married." His sudden announcement left me speechless. I knew he had been dating someone, but I never expected he would be considering marriage. Feeling the same way, my mother spoke up. "Congratulations, Owen." Tears welled up in her eyes as she said those words. "Wishing you happiness, son." Following my mother, my father also offered his blessing for Owen's marriage. I was overwhelmed by surprise and struggled to find the right words, but I managed to say, "Owen, congratulations. I hope you'll be happy." That was all I could say. "Thank you, Mom, Dad, and Sis." He expressed his gratitude, and from then on, the conversation revolved around Owen's girlfriend, making it a joyful and memorable evening. Several months later, my brother started spending more time away from home. He had been staying at his fiance's house occasionally, but recently, he seemed busy with wedding preparations. The discussions about my brother's wedding were progressing smoothly, and both my parents and I were eagerly looking forward to it. It was about 2 weeks before my brother's wedding when something unexpected happened. I received a call on my cell phone from an unknown number. I wondered who it could be. Thinking it might be an important call, I answered, "Hello?" After a brief pause, the person on the other end spoke. "Nice to meet you. I'm Sarah." As soon as I heard that name, I immediately realized she must be my brother's fiancée. "Sarah, you're Owen's fiancée, right? Nice to meet you." After I said that, Sarah explained that she had asked my brother for my contact information because she had something important to discuss with me. "So what is that you want to talk to me about?" I asked, curious about the purpose of her call. "I'll get straight to the point. I would like you not to attend the wedding." "Huh?" I couldn't help with the sudden request. Was she telling me not to attend the wedding? Sarah, I don't really understand what you mean." My heart started pounding. Could it be that my brother's fiancé would saying such a thing? I meant what I said. I only want Owen's parents to attend the wedding. It would be embarrassing if you were there. Embarrassing? I couldn't comprehend it at all. Not only was I suddenly told not to attend the wedding, but now she was saying it would be embarrassing. I stood there, bewildered and unable to say anything, as Sarah continued speaking. "Anyway, That's how it is. Please understand. Goodbye. Wait, hold on. But the call had already been disconnected at the moment. Despite trying to call her back several times, she never answered. I had no choice but to wait for my brother to return and hear the details from him. However, from that day on, my brother stopped coming home. When I sent him a message, I learned that they had decided to live together as the wedding was approaching. I couldn't bring myself to call and ask while he was with her, so I reluctantly decided to explain the situation to our parents alone. Mom, Dad, it seems like I won't be able to attend Owen's wedding. When I said that, both my father and mother looked confused. What do you mean? You don't want to participate? My father asked. And I told them about the call I received from my brother's fiancée earlier today. Upon hearing this, my parents became furious. What's the meaning of this? It's absurd to prevent family members from attending a wedding. Exactly. Emilia is Owen's sister. It's unthinkable for her not to attend. They voiced their frustration. Personally, I had believed that the main characters of the wedding were Owen and Sarah, so if my presence made them uncomfortable, I thought it might be better not to force myself to attend. However, my parents' anger was more intense than I had anticipated, so I immediately called my brother to confront him. According to my parents' conversation with him, they found out that Sarah, my brother's fiancée, discovered that I had been laid off from my job and was now working part-time as a temporary worker. She didn't want me to attend the wedding because she felt it would be embarrassing. I understood her previous mention of embarrassment referred to this situation. Furthermore, she had issues with my lower educational background compared to my brother's, and the fact that the company I used to work for was smaller than his. But upon learning the reasons behind her decision, my father responded with anger. This is ridiculous. Educational background and where you work have nothing to do with it. He expressed his frustration. I wasn't completely devoid of anger myself. However, what saddened me more was the fact my brother's future spouse was someone who judged others based on such trivial things. But since it was my brother's choice, I didn't say anything in particular. Nevertheless, the reason for not inviting me was so absurd that my parents were slightly angry, both at the fiancé and at my brother. As a result, we contacted all the relatives who had been invited to my brother's wedding and explained the situation. In the end, none on our side of the family attended my brother's wedding. A few days later, I received another call, this time from Sarah, who had become my brother's wife. As soon as I picked up the phone, she started shouting furiously. What do you think you're doing? She said. I don't know what your intentions are, but excluding all the relatives like this is going too far. What kind of harassment is this? Thanks to you, I've been humiliated. Under her intense pressure, I firmly conveyed my message to her. Just so you know, I haven't done anything. I told my parents and they got angry and contacted the relatives. It's their individual decision not to attend. Although I said that, she refused to listen at all. In the end, she berated me extensively and unilaterally hung up the phone. After a while, my brother called me. Sis, I'm sorry about earlier. Sarah said something unnecessary things, right? As I listened to my brother, I realized that he actually wanted to reprimand his wife more severely, but her relatives included his boss at work, so he couldn't speak up strongly. Upon hearing that reason, I also, because I wasn't particularly bothered by it, I reassured him. Don't worry about it, it's okay, I said, trying not to make my brother feel responsible. I'm sure he's going through a lot as well. A few days later, I received another call from my brother's wife. Sister-in-law, I'm sorry for the suddenness, but could you leave the house? Huh? This girl always says something completely unexpected. It's troubling to ask something like that out of the blue, I said. Then Sarah replied, Oh, right. You have a part-time job, but we need you to leave. We want to live there. She said so. According to my brother's wife, she wanted support because she was pregnant. She argued that since my brother would eventually inherit our family lineage, they had the right to live in that house. To top it all off, shall I ask our relatives to arrange a job for you? She said something like that, and I got really annoyed. No, thank you, I said and hung up the phone. A few hours later, my mother burst into my room with great force. Emilia, what did you say to Sarah? Huh? I didn't understand why my mother was angry. Sarah is pregnant and not feeling well, right? She just said she wants to live with us because she can't rely on her parents. Why did you refuse? It's pitiful, isn't it? She said that. Oh, wait, Mom. Something seems to be misunderstood. As I said that, my mother seems to regain some composure. Mom, I don't know what Sarah said to you, but listen. Saying that, I explained in detail the contents of the phone conversation with her. Then it turned out that what my mother heard was completely different from what I had explained. I see. I'm sorry. I didn't know that you were told to leave. She apologized while saying that. According to what I heard later, my mother had severe morning sickness when she was pregnant with me. Since she had lost both of her parents at a young age and couldn't rely on them, and even my father's parents didn't treat her well, the pregnancy period was really tough for her. That's why, despite Sarah's inappropriate remarks at the wedding, my mother couldn't just ignore it because she knew how difficult it was due to the morning sickness. My mother kept apologizing to me over and over again. However, it's likely true that my mother is genuinely worried about Sarah. Thinking that way, I told my mother, Mom, I'm moving out. Huh? My mother had an anxious look in her face. But it's something I had been gradually considering for a while. Actually, Mom, you said you only needed a little bit of money for living expenses, so I've been saving the rest. That's why I want to live with Sarah and the others. I decided to give up my current space to my younger siblings. The next day, I found an apartment to live alone and immediately started the moving process. As soon as my brother's wife learned that I was leaving, she excitedly prepared for the move. On the day I moved out, she moved into our family home. Although her forcefulness made my younger brother and parents somewhat uncomfortable, a new chapter of life had begun, regardless. A few months had passed since then. I would still work in multiple part-time jobs while actively searching for full-time employment, and it seemed like I was finally close to securing a job. That's when I received a call from my mother at home. When I asked that, my mother fell silent. Mom, is something wrong? Then my mother spoke with a heavy tone. Well, you see, Owen hasn't been contributing to the living expenses at all. But Owen wasn't like that before, right? So I thought it was strange. What do you mean? Apprehensively I asked, and my mother continued. It's Sarah, you know. Despite complaining about severe morning sickness, she eats a lot and goes out during the day. Just the other day, when Owen was away on a business trip, she came back with a smell of alcohol. Huh? I somehow felt like I understood what my mother was trying to say. According to my mother, Sarah didn't show any signs of morning sickness, and not only that, she was out and about every day. On top of that, she only seemed to have the smell of alcohol when Owen wasn't around. I clearly sensed something was off, so I quickly contacted Owen. Hey, Owen, I know it's awkward to ask, but how's it going with our living situation at home? Upon asking that, Owen replied, Oh, it's going smoothly. Sarah takes care of things around the house. I hesitated, but I made up my mind to tell him the truth. It seems like Sarah spends her days going out and doesn't do any household chores, and it seems like she doesn't have any signs of morning sickness either. Huh? What are you talking about? You must be joking. Owen's voice was trembling. I used to give Sarah both the living expenses and her allowance together, and I asked her to hand over the living expenses to Mom as it is, and she used to tell me every night that she was doing the housework properly. She even mentioned feeling nauseous sometimes. It's all a lie, Owen. Please stop causing more distress to Mom. I couldn't bear it any longer, and I told him so. A few days later, I received a call from my parents, and it was decided that I would return home after a long time. I was a bit anxious, but it seemed like we were going to have the meal together as a family, which hadn't happened in a while. When I returned home after a long time, my mother had prepared a lot of my favorite dishes. Then after a while, the intercom rang. Since my mother was busy cooking, I went to open the door instead, and there stood an unfamiliar couple. Good evening. We're Sarah's parents. Thank you for inviting us today. They said politely and bowed their heads, so I did the same. I was surprised to see Sarah's parents here since I hadn't heard anything about it, but it seemed like my mother, father, and brother knew. Sarah herself seemed unaware too, with a pale face. As we were about to gather around the dining table and start the meal, my brother stood up. Excuse me for a moment, he said and stood up. With a face that seemed determined, my brother glared at his wife. What did you spend the living expenses I've been giving you on? Huh? Caught off guard by the sudden question from her husband, my sister-in-law jumbled for words. What do you mean? Her parents also looked confused and troubled. You claim to be helping Mom, but it turns out you've been going out and having fun every day, and when I was away on business trips, you were drinking alcohol. Weren't you supposed to be pregnant? As my brother pressed her with questions. That is... She stammered and struggled to find the right words. If it's true, show me some proof that you're pregnant. I've been busy with work and couldn't be involved much, but you must have a mother-child handbook or something, right? Despite his voice, my sister-in-law remained motionless. No, perhaps she couldn't move, because she wasn't pregnant after all. And then my brother reluctantly pressed his sister-in-law for answers. She explained that she thought it would be more financially liberating to live with my parents. She decided to pretend to be pregnant so she wouldn't be forced into housework. She thought it would be fine as long as she didn't get caught. She tearfully confessed these things. Her parents also looked awkward and pale, bowing their heads. My brother looked at his in-laws and said clearly, I want a divorce. That's okay, right? It seemed that even the in-laws couldn't deny the extent of this matter. After that, everything happened in a flash. My brother divorced his wife and continued living at our parents' house. Fortunately, since his wife was entirely at fault, it didn't affect my brother's career advancement or anything like that. Nowadays, in return for the travel costs, I'll take care of our parents with full responsibility. He said that and even helps with household chores. As for me, I found a job and now live alone, working at my new workplace. I visit my parents' home once a week, and we gather around the dining table as a family. On a more personal note, I'm in a relationship with a man I met at my new workplace, and we are considering marriage. Next month, I plan to bring him home to meet my family. Of course, I'm not the kind of person who judges others based on their education or profession. My dream now is to build a happy future with him, my family, and myself.